going on YouTube? Today I bring you my 2022 NFL draft grades for the NFC. Texans fans are now getting put into my category of worst fans because, God, they're pretty annoying. I give you a B, and that's not good enough for you. And, all right, but you're annoying as hell, so I'm just going to say that. Anyways, moving on to the NFC teams. Self-explanatory, right? We're just going through each team, giving them grades for the draft. Starting off with the Cardinals, I was a big fan of this draft. I think it was pretty great. You start out with a really good pick here in Trey McBride. Obviously, he's going to be your tight end going forward. I think they brought Zach Ertz back for 2 or 3 years, but, he's got, probably a couple or 3 years left. He'll probably be your 2 to start out, but I imagine he's going to develop into a star tight end in the league, especially if you give him a couple years. I could really see Trey McBride being like a top 5 tight end, 5 years down the road from now. Cameron Thomas out of San Diego State, I was a big fan of. I think the 3rd round is a good value pick for him, as well as the fact that he's just going to fit nicely across from J.J. Watt. I think he's a good pickup. And then Myjon Sanders, I think, fits really well in this system, going to play more of that outside linebacker role for you. And now you've got yourself, Myjon Sanders, Cam Thomas, J.J. Watt. You're building yourself a nice pass rush up front there. Keontae Ingram, this is about the place I would have taken him. And I think they got some really solid guys here at the end of the draft. Keontae Ingram being a very solid running back that is pretty speedy and very quick with his feet, and is going to make a nice duo with James Conner. Lecitus Smith out of Virginia Tech, I was very high on, so 6th round is a very big steal for the Cardinals here. He's going to be a phenomenal depth guard at the very worst, but can legitimately be a starter for them. Christian Matthew didn't really look at. I've never even heard of Valdosta State before, so can't really say much about him. But, they did go corner at a point here, so maybe it's a bit more of an upside corner, but, just not really much to talk about there. Jesse Luketa, now this was a guy that I was very low on in my own personal opinion. Now, I wasn't 7th round low on him, but I remember people were throwing a fit when I had him in the 5th round. So going in the 7th round is good value. For most people, it's tremendous value. For me, it's just good value. But, he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he is a solid pass rusher that, gives some nice power to his game. He's got a nice arsenal. I think with some development can definitely turn into a solid guy. And honestly, you might have 3 starting pass rushers here for you in a couple years or so. It could turn out to be very good. And then Marquise Hayes, another guy that I was very high on and I think will start at a point for the Cardinals here. So you look at this class, you got a great team for the future here. You got a future starting tight end, potentially 3 starting future edges, potentially a future running back, potentially two starting future guards, potentially a future starting corner. For me, that's a great draft to get when you're a team like Arizona. You're looking to build for the future right now. Hopkins, we don't know how much longer he has left. He's going to be suspended for the first 6 games anyways. Kyler Murray, we'll see with him going forward. I don't think, to be honest, he is the future of Arizona. So I think if you're just putting together a nice young core that's going to be good in a few years, I like this draft. I think it was a pretty great draft for the Cardinals here. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, I gave him a D+. This was not a bad class, but I was not a fan of it for the most part. Drake Jackson, I was very, very low on. And I know it's very unpopular. Me personally, I wouldn't have taken him in the draft. I would have probably just signed him afterwards. And again, I get that's very unpopular, but I just really do not see what people see in this guy. For the 49ers, he will develop into a solid rotational pass rusher. I do believe that. Just, they're very good at doing that. They've got a good defense. So I understand picking him up here for San Francisco. I just would have much rather done it day 3. For me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Tyrion Davis-Price out of LSU is a massive reach in the 3rd round. There's much better running backs you could have taken at that spot. And while he does fit the system, I'm not a fan of reaching on guys to fit your system. I don't really like that strategy. Danny Gray, another guy that I just was simply not even close to as high as a 3rd round grade on him. An athletic upside guy, sure, but I just don't think that San Francisco gets that out of him. Spencer Burford maybe it's Buford, is a fine tackle from UTSA. He's a versatile. He can probably play guard for you, is where they'll try him. But he's just, again, not a guy I would have picked up, 4th round. Samuel Womack, just didn't look at this guy enough. When I looked at Tyson Anderson, I just didn't see anything impressive from him, but, he's probably worth the pick. Nick Sakel is just kind of one of the 2 picks I do like here because while this is about where I would have taken him, maybe a bit earlier, he is a really nice upside tackle to where I definitely think he could be your future at left or right tackle, which would be obviously great value there at the 6th. Kalia Davis, didn't look at, so I can't really say much about him. Tariq Castro Fields was the steal here for the 49ers, in my opinion. I was a huge fan of Castro Fields. I think he's an athletic, high upside corner that will be a starter, at least, for the Niners here. And you just brought back Jason Verrett. You know, you signed... who did they sign? It was the Chiefs corner, I think. I got to look it up who I'm thinking about. But I think he will start for you in some capacity. And I just really like him overall. And I think especially here in the 6th round, it's just phenomenal depth if you're the 49ers. So this was the one pick that I really did like. They picked up Travius Ward. So, you know, Castro Fields would probably start out at 3, but I definitely think can replace Verrett going forward. And then Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. Wasn't a fan of him. I know some people were high on him. He's obviously not going to be the quarterback here in San Francisco, but could definitely develop into a solid backup. Obviously, Jimmy G is probably going to be traded some point this offseason. So, you know, besides the Castro Fields pick, you know, Buford was a fine pickup, and there are some decent upside guys here. Like, you're getting potentially a couple players that will make an impact for you. Overall, I wouldn't say it's a bad class, but I definitely was not a fan of it, and it's one of the worst classes in my opinion. Then we have the Rams, who comes in with a C-. You know, just a very meh draft to me. You know, you start out with Logan Bruss, which was a massive reach for me. But when you're a team like the Rams, where, you know, kind of similar to Drake Jackson, and Cole Strange even, where the Rams are really good at developing linemen. And Logan Bruss is definitely a guy that's like under the right system can certainly turn into a starter level guy similar to Cole Strange. And so I think it makes sense here, but it's just a massive reach for me. Jacoby Durant is, again, one of those guys where, like, yeah, he fits really nicely here. He makes sense. They're going to develop him. He'll probably be their, you know, solution to what they had with Darius Williams. But he's not going to be as good, though. Darius Williams is pretty underrated. So Jacoby Durant, you know, he's a solid pickup. But again, I just don't like reaching for need. Kyron Williams is a good fit again, and I think this time, you know, this actually is about where I would take him. He's going to be your Sony Michel replacement, so you kind of see a trend here, right? You're looking for a replacement for Corbett and Williams and Sony Michel, and if that's the strategy you're going to take, I'm fine with that because it just won you a Super Bowl. But obviously, they're not going to make the same impact that those guys did. Kyron Williams, kind of the same case. Quentin Lake, I think, was a good pickup here. I'm a fan of Quentin Lake. 6th round is a steal for him, in my opinion. I think he'll add some nice depth to that safety room. Be a solid, strong safety. Darian Kendrick is a guy that I was much higher on at the beginning. And then just slowly watching tape, him testing, just kept dropping. And I still pick him probably 4th or 5th round. So this is a good value pick. And again, under the Rams and Sean McVay, very much can develop into a starting caliber corner. As of right now, he's not really close to being a starting caliber corner, so needs some development for sure, but could turn into a worthwhile pick. Daniel Hardy, a solid edge rusher out of Montana State that put up production, but it's just kind of that question of, like, can he put up similar stuff at the NFL level? I don't think he does. So, I mean, it's a fine rotational piece to pick up, but, you know, Russ Yeast, I never looked at, really don't know anything about him, and same with AJ Curry, so not much to say about there. But the rest of the class, you know, it's just there's a lot of reaching for need, and I think there's a couple pickups that could be worth your time, but for me, it just comes off as like a very draft, because if you're just going to go from the approach of trying to get what you had last year, which won you a Super Bowl, great, it's just not going to do the same for you because Logan Bruss isn't Austin Corbett, and I think that's one thing. It's either him or the other guard. Jacoby Durant isn't Darius Williams. Kyron Williams isn't Sony Michel. So if you're going to take that angle, fine. It's a mad draft to me. Then the last NFC West team, the Seahawks, are going to get a B. I thought this was just a good draft. You get a starting tackle with Charles Cross, who's going to go in there at left tackle, which I'm not sure about because I definitely view him as more of a right tackle, but with some development time can definitely turn into, you know, a worthwhile tackle there at left tackle. Just wish you would have taken him with Russell Wilson. You know, obviously, you know, now building up a line with Russell Wilson gone doesn't make sense. But, you know, then they get Boye Mafe in the 2nd round, which I was a big fan of. He was a 1st round player for me. I think he fits better as a 4-3 end, but can certainly still work in a 3-4, I'm sure. As a 3-4 D end or a 3-4 outside linebacker, I'm not sure quite, because I do like him, again, just more as that, like, hand in the dirt. And we don't know exactly how this. I imagine they'll probably just play their defense similar to, you know, a Fangio style defense, in which case he'll be starting at defensive end most likely, but I don't like him in that role, so we'll see, because I feel like this is a bad fit for him. But as a player and the talent, it's definitely there. Kenneth Murray the third, with back-to-back picks. I don't think it makes the most sense. Like, yeah, he's going to be a running back too. You probably let go of Chris Carson soon, so Murray will be your running back of the future. But I just feel like, he's a really talented running back, but it kind of goes back to just that idea of like a good running back should be the icing on the cake, not the buildings of the foundation. Kenneth Murray is not a guy that I'm going to be looking at as a young player to carry my team with Drew Lock as my quarterback. So, and even then, there's a whole other thing with Drew Lock where it's like I still think he can be a starter for the Seahawks going forward and stuff, but I don't think the pick makes sense for me. Besides that, though, I really did like the rest of the draft. I mean, you have Abraham Lucas, who will start at right tackle for you. This is a good value pick. I think he'll start. He's a guy that doesn't have the highest ceiling, but what he does well is definitely good enough to start for you at tackle right now. So you've just filled in both your tackle gaps. In the fourth, picking up Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, another guy that I was much higher on, just dropped as the process went on, but is still a great player to pick up here. And then you get Tariq Woolen the next round, who I know some people started to cool on, but for me, it's still like, I mean, yeah, you're just not going to be putting him on the one-on-one situations. If you're going to run again like a Fangio-style defense, you're probably going to be playing mostly, you're looking at probably a lot of man here, so that does concern me because Fangio-style defenses normally are going to run again like a lot of man and like the occasional cover two. In a cover two, I think Tariq Woolen works great, but in a cover zero, that's a bit more where I'm concerned because he's not a one-on-one guy, even though he did play well in one-on-one drills, which is hard for any corner, but let alone a 6'4", I think it was. So overall, I still like to pick up. He can definitely be a good corner at the next level. Same case with both these guys, but the fit's questionable for Woolen. Kobe, he's had some inconsistencies, so potentially two good picks, but right now, Tyreek Smith in the fifth round. Another player where I was very high on and just dropped throughout the year. There was pass rushers that were just better, had more upside. They were just fit quicker. They were stronger. Tyreek Smith just really doesn't do anything well in particular, but he's a solid guy to pick up, mid-day 3 that's going to make some sort of impact. He'll add to the rotation. You don't really have any guys built to be like 3-4 outside linebackers right now, so I think it makes sense. He fits, right? He'll start for you most likely, which is, it's great to get a starter anytime here in the 5th round. 7th round, Bo Melton, high upside kind of tool gadget guy from Rutgers, who I'm not particularly high on. I don't think he'll be anything here with the Seahawks, but definitely has like a shot to become something. Again, he's got that like very light Deebo Samuel sense to him, but not even close to the same level. So, I can see the Seahawks. I think it's worthwhile to at least take the shot here, but probably just more a guy I would have signed after the draft. And then I just never looked at whoever Derek Young is. I just never looked at him. So overall, I think it's a good draft, right? You're getting 2 starting tackles here. You got a couple guys here that are going to play some good edge for you, 2 potentially good cornerbacks. And regardless of, whether they really needed it or not, Kenneth Murray is going to be a good running back for them. So overall, again, there's a lot of good here. For me, it's just a good draft. This is a B. Then we got the Buccaneers, who I give a B+. This is a really good draft for me. Logan Hall in the 2nd round, not the 1st round, it'd be 2nd round. And I think he makes sense. He fits, right? He's going to play DN for you, and he'll be good at it, right? He's a very solid pass rusher. A bit of a reach for me. I wasn't as high on him as others, but, still a good pickup here. Luke Goedeke out of Central Michigan, I think was a great pickup. Probably going to play probably more of that guard role for you, but I think a versatile enough guy to where he could switch out to tackle if you need him to. But for right now, you got your guy at guard. Again, great to get his starter at any time, especially in the 2nd round. Rashad White out of ASU. I don't know if it's the most needed pick in the world. Like, you've already got kind of a little round table there with you got Keyshawn Vaughn, you got Giovanni Bernard, you got Leonard Fournette. So it's like I'd rather take him somewhere to be the starting running back, to be honest, because he's that kind of talent, in my opinion. But I think as, he's probably going to be your number 2. He's a solid guy. He'll be a replacement for Leonard Fournette, but even then he signed like a 3-year contract, so who knows. But I would have preferred him somewhere else. Cade Otton out of Washington, a guy that I wasn't as high on as other people and probably would have taken him more late day 3. He's a solid tight end to pick up, right? It looks less and less likely like they actually want Gronk back. If he does resign, then this pick gets even worse for me because then he's a 3rd tight end. As of right now, he's the 2nd maybe might even start above Cameron Brate, to be honest. But I like Cameron Brate, and I think he'll probably be the 2 to him. So he's a fine pickup, but nothing special. Jake Camarda is similar case to Jordan Stout. Like, yeah, he's a good punter, and I like him more than Jordan Stout. I don't like him more than Matt Ariza. I've been very vocal about that Jake Camarda is a talented punter, but I just would rather take Ariza. But regardless, he's a good pickup here. I mean, if you want to go get a punter, he's a talented one, just go get him. Zion McCollum, definitely one of the bigger steals of the draft. I had I believe, second round grade on him. A small guy that played at a small school, but the talent he put on tape is undeniably great. I just wish he was a bit taller, and he genuinely probably would have been a first rounder because the zone play is very good, and he's definitely no slack in man either. So, just a guy that he's a bit small, but he's a very talented corner that is well worth picking up here in the 5th round. Ko Kieft out of Minnesota, never looked at him. And Andre Anthony, just fine edge to pick up here in the 7th. Nothing special to say about him. So overall, I think you're getting 3 starters here, and 2 future starters, and a really good running back to make that round table go round. So for me, this was a really good draft. Your Buccaneers team that you're going to go try to win this year, and then you're probably not going to be competitive the year after, or at least you want to have a good foundation in place for whoever's your quarterback going forward. I think this draft makes sense. It was really good to me. Then we have the Falcons, and this is, again, just a good draft to me. Nothing special, but it's a good draft. Drake London, I'm a fan of Drake London. I think in the right system, he can be a very good receiver. That system is not Atlanta. This is a guy that needs proper development at the outside in order to become that outside receiver. Because genuinely, he could be a Mike Evans type player, but Atlanta's just not going to use him that way. That's just not how they use receivers. And so at that point, he's definitely going to translate to more of the slot guy. And even then, I'm concerned because your quarterbacks are Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, who, are not the most accurate across the middle guys. And in Marcus Mariota's case, he doesn't even like to pass the ball that much. So, I just don't see it working out, to be honest. When your weapons are Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and London's going to be forced into more of the slot role, I just don't see it working out. So, really, I think this is going to be a pick that maybe in the future he turns into a better receiver, but I don't see him working out, as a young player here in Atlanta. Arnold Ebiketie is a solid pickup here in the 2nd. I think a bit overrated athleticism. And besides that, I don't think he's that special of a player because I just don't see anything spectacular about him besides the fact that he is successful in a fair amount of his pass rush reps, but just not as successful as I'd like for someone that's not particularly good at anything or particularly athletic. So it's a fine pickup. He fits. He'll play that outside linebacker role for you. He can switch into the inside, but it makes sense, but it's just kind of a meh pick to me. So the draft doesn't start out the best for these guys, but then I think it gets really good after this. Starting off with Troy Anderson, who, again, I was a big fan of. He's a big linebacker that I believe will make an impact at the next level despite playing at a small school. You're replacing Olakunle, I think it's Olakunle Fatukasi, here, where he's not going to be as good, right? He's not going to be the tackle machine, but playing next to Deion Jones and, or it's Foyesade Olakunle, replacing Foyesade, I think makes sense. I love him. He's going to be great here for the Falcons. Desmond Ridder in the 3rd. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Desmond Ridder, but it's just simply the fact that you're getting a starter caliber quarterback here in the 3rd. That it's great value. It's the same way with the Titans, where regardless of whether they actually turn into your future, getting a starter level guy that you can develop in the 3rd is just great value anytime, especially for a quarterback. So, yeah, for me, Ridder, I don't think he's the future of the Falcons. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but they're probably going to be my number 1 pick for next year. So obviously I don't think it works out, and Falcons fans are probably going to get pissed off for that one, but it's still a great pick nonetheless, whether it works out or not. D'Angelo Malone is a pick that I'm a big fan of. I love D'Angelo Malone. I think this is a steal for him here in the 3rd. He's going to be a pretty successful pass rusher, and there's definitely a chance that you're creating a good duo here with him and Arnold Ebiketie. Again, I'm a big fan of Malone. Tyler Algier, a very talented running back that is probably going to be a running back of the future. Patterson's here for 1 year. They just released Mike Davis. This is your guy going forward. I think he'll be great to add there. He's going to have some tough time with the offensive line, but BYU's offensive line wasn't exactly the greatest at run blocking. But you do get a really good run blocker here with Justin Schaefer, to where he's not a good pass blocker. I do not believe that at all. But when it comes to run blocking, this guy's a monster. And, this is about where I would have taken him anyways, just because I don't like one-dimensional linemen like that. And also, he's like, yeah, he's good at run blocking. He's not Trent Williams by any means, but he's worth the pick here, definitely. And I think makes a lot of sense here. And then John Fitzpatrick out of Georgia, just a fine tight end to add here. I mean, he's your 3 most likely, 2 or 3, but either way, he's not going to start, obviously. So, I think it starts off rough. And the last pick's meh, but in between there are a lot of picks that I really like. It's not quite like a really good draft for me because, again, obviously if they're going to be picking as high as I think, then it's not going to be that worthwhile. But for the future, I think you're getting some really good players here, so I think it's a good draft. Then we got the Panthers, who I give a B+. This is a really good draft to me. Ikem Ekwonu at 6 is not a pick that I ever made in any of my mock drafts, but it just made sense, when it did happen, because he's just a versatile, really good offensive lineman that's really good in the run game. Although they don't run that much, it's still just great to have, and it just makes sense, right? He's going to play probably left tackle for you, and at that point, you can move Brady Christensen into guard, and you got yourself a much, much, much better line than you had with Ekwonu, Christensen slash Elfine, I think is how you say his name, Bozeman, Moten, and Austin Corbett. Am I thinking of Austin Corbett? It's one of those Rams guards. You've got such an incredibly upgraded line here because if Sam Darnold doesn't produce, which I still don't think he will, then he's gone, obviously, because there's no excuses at that point. You've got an incredible offensive line, incredible weapons, incredible defense. The coaching is definitely a question, but you've got a phenomenal team here outside of quarterback, so this is a great pick. And then, speaking of quarterback, you get Matt Corral in the 3rd round, and like I just said, anytime you can get a potential starter in the 3rd round, especially a quarterback, it's a great pick. And Matt Corral, while I was not the biggest fan of him, with some development in this Panthers system, could potentially be your guy going forward. And that's phenomenal if you got him in the 3rd round. You add on to that, you get Brandon Smith in the 4th, who's just a naturally athletically talented, gifted linebacker that I think will start for you. He's a great pickup. Amari Barno, I wasn't as high on him as some other people. This is about where I would have taken him, but a very athletic edge nonetheless that I don't think fits great, but he's there. Cade Mays is going to give you some good depth. I probably wouldn't drafted him, but he can maybe start at you for guard. I think it'll be Brady Christensen, but some good depth. And then you get Kalen Barnes, which, again, wasn't high on him, but it's a good value here. A very quick corner. And if you're drafting a corner in the 7th, I'm pretty cool with him having the speed that he does. So I think the main grade from this comes from the first 3 picks, right? That you're getting potentially your future quarterback. You're getting the final piece to a great offensive line. Maybe not the final piece, but the penultimate for sure. And then Brandon Smith, just a very naturally talented linebacker. I think this is not quite a great draft because I'm not a big fan of those last 3 picks. Kalen Barnes is a good pick, but the other 2, it's enough to not make it great for me, but this is a very good draft here by the Panthers. Then the Saints are going to get a C+. This is just a kind of meh draft for me because it starts out decently strong, right? Chris Olave, I think he makes sense. He's a good fit here. There were other receivers I personally would have taken, but he's a decent fit. It makes sense, right? Trevor Penning, definitely not a guy I was going to take in the 1st round, but he makes sense. I think, I prefer him as more of that right tackle, but you can move him over to left tackle at worst. He go to guard. He'll probably be solid there, but I'm not as high on him as other people. Alontae Taylor was a guy that I was high on, and I think this is right where he should have gone. He's a very talented corner that probably going to stick on the outside. You move a guy like Paulson Adebo maybe more to the inside or something, but definitely a player that can start for you. And then that's just kind of where it ends, right? DeMarco Jackson, his ceiling is really just like a Quan Alexander, kind of like the Saints had. I don't think he even really hits on that ceiling, so I'm not a big fan of him. And then Jordan Jackson at Air Force, which I just didn't have a draftable grade on him. I'm just not a big fan of him in general. I think you got a solid receiver here that fits the scheme. Penning was a reach for me, in my opinion. Taylor's a great pickup, probably the best pick of the draft. But, for the Saints draft, other than that, it just comes off as a really meh draft. So I think the Alontae Taylor bumps it up. The Alontae Taylor pick bumps it up, but just to a C+ for me. I wasn't a huge fan of the Saints draft, but it's still a solid class here. I mean, you're going to get 3 starters out of it, so, Then we got the Commanders, who I give a straight-up C. This is just a very meh draft to me because there's kind of a lot to go over here, right? I mean, you have Jahan Dotson, who I do like. He's a very good, solid speed threat. It's definitely a reach. He's not a mid-first rounder to me by any stretch of the imagination. Fedarian Mathis, great. He's going to be a solid run eater that can fit in there at defensive tackle, right? He's probably going to start with Deron Payne on his way out the door. Great. He is a bit of a reach to me. If he's a starter, cool, but still a bit of a reach. Brian Robinson, I like the pick. I think this makes sense, right? Yeah, you have of course I can't remember his name, but you already have a running back that in all reality is pretty similar to Brian Robinson, actually. So it's like, yeah, you're getting a solid 1-2 punch here, but you have Antonio Gibson and you have JD McKissick as well, which of course I can't forget. So it's like, to be honest, he's probably your running back 3 day one. So it's just like, yeah, he's a fine player. I think he could be a starting running back someday for some team, but I just don't see why take him with your 3rd pick here. Then in the 4th round, getting Percy Butler was not a guy that I really went over much. I just didn't look at Louisiana's defense. But I've heard good things about him, right? So I'm sure he's a solid pick here in the 4th. Sam Howell is the Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder picks on steroids. Because, again, if you can get a guy that's potentially a starter for you at quarterback in the 5th round, that's a great pickup. I don't believe Carson Wentz is the future of the Commanders. I truly do believe Sam Howell actually has a better chance than Carson Wentz. If you have that, that's phenomenal to have. And Sam Howell is a guy that played well without much talent at UNC. And, yeah, he played in a very simple RPO offense, but I think he can make it work with this Commanders team. So to be honest, I really love the pick there. And Cole Turner, I also am a fan of that pick, as I was high on Cole Turner. He's a solid tight end that, he's not the most athletic player. He's not the best receiver, but he's a solid blocker for sure. And Chris Paul is a great pickup for me. Definitely a good value pick, that someone that can start at guard and honestly might start at right guard for you, which if you can get a starter in the 7th round, great. Christian Holmes, not the biggest fan of. So that's kind of the issue for me, is it's a reach, doesn't make sense. Didn't really look at him. 3 great picks. Cole Turner is a good pick, not great. 2 great picks, a good pick, and then So for me, that's just, you have some solid day 3 picks there, but for me, this just comes off as a very class for me. Then the Cowboys getting just a kind of as well. Tyler Smith is a project, which fine. I mean, I really don't know if he starts, in all honesty, which obviously you don't want if you're picking for 1st round for need here. I don't know if he starts over, I always forget if it's Steele or Knight, but whatever your right tackle is, because he is a project, right? Like, and I think he's a decent tackle for sure, that with some development can turn into a star tackle. He has that kind of upside, but as of right now, he's probably not going to start for you. So I just don't know how I feel about taking him right there. Sam Williams, a guy that I was much higher on than this late 2nd round grade, but I don't know how he fits here, because for me, he's always been more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, and obviously that's not what Dallas runs. Dan Quinn will make it work some way, I'm sure, but I don't know if he makes that much of an impact here in year 1, and also just has had some off-the-field issues. Jalen Tolbert is a solid pick here, but I just don't see why you need receiver. You've already got CeeDee Lamb and I guess Cedric Wilson did leave, though, actually. So let me look at the Cowboys receivers, because now that I'm thinking about it, actually, yeah, they have CeeDee Lamb. They traded away Amari. They lost Cedric Cooper. Yeah, you have Michael Gallup and James Washington. So Jalen Tolbert doesn't start, right? He's not a top 3 receiver on the team. Definitely can surpass Washington. I don't think he surpasses Michael Gallup. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, you're getting a solid receiver 4 here in the 3rd, whatever. I think he could have gone somewhere else. You get Dalton Schultz 2.0 here with Jake Ferguson, except I was much lower on him. He's not going to be as good as Dalton Schultz, so it's whatever, but he'll be your tight end of the future, most likely. Matt Waletzko out of North Dakota. He's a solid tackle. Wasn't the most impressed when I looked at him, so he's just for me here. He doesn't ever start, in my opinion. Deron Bland, never looked at him. Damon Clark, now this was a guy that I was much higher on, but apparently he's not going to play year 1, so I can understand why he would fall in the draft, but fall to round 5? I don't know, because he is like a 2nd, early 3rd round talent to me, so a guy that, if he stays healthy, I think the Cowboys are getting a great depth pick here at linebacker. And then another good pick that I do like here in the 5th with John Ridgeway, who's really similar to like a DJ Jones, where he's a really good run defender. and doesn't ever really contribute anything to pass rush, but then every now and then will like eventually blow up the line. So I think he's a great player to get here in the 5th. I mean, I would take DJ Jones before the 5th, and I think that's what he could be. So I think it's a good pickup here. And then Devin Harper never looked at. So yeah, I mean, you got a project, someone I'm not sure about, another person I'm not sure about, a fine pick, a meh pick, a meh pick, a meh pick, a good pick, right? 2 late round guys, Devin Harper, eh. So, you can kind of see where I'm just getting a very vibe off this class. But, you're looking at this, though. I mean, Tyler Smith can definitely be a starter. Sam Williams can be a starter. Tolbert can be a starter. Ferguson can be a starter. Damone Clark could be a starter. Ridgeway could be a starter. It's a lot of could-be's, and the Cowboys are very much going for a developmental future draft here, which I'm not the biggest fan of their approach with this draft. So for me, it just comes out as a kind of meh, because there is some good upside here, but kind of meh draft. So C+. The Eagles are going to get a B-. This was a solid draft for me. Jordan Davis, I mean, I get it. He feels like an Eagles pick. Like, he just feels like an Eagles player. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? He's going to... I mean, you got a phenomenal D-line. Like TFG tweeted out, but, like, genuinely, the Eagles' second line is better than most of the league's first line. So, at the very least, you've got yourself a phenomenal run defender playing on your second line. That's great to have, obviously, right? And that's what I think he is, right? He's going to go in there to play 1 or 2 downs on any given 4-down stretch. So it makes sense, right? It's not where I would have gone, but I get it at the end of the day. Cam Jurgens is your replacement for Jason Kelce after this year. And sure, I mean, if you want to, it's a bit of a reach for me, but I think a guy that can definitely start at center for you. So you got your center of the future here. Nakobe Dean fell because, he's small. He's not the best run defender, and he is kind of hurt, not often, but he has a lot of injuries on him and stuff. So I understand why he fell. At the same time, it's a really good fit here in Philadelphia, right? You run a 4-3, you don't need to be an elite run defender. You don't need to be the biggest guy. So it makes sense here, right? As long as he stays healthy, he will be a solid to good linebacker here for the Eagles. And who knows? He could still turn into a star. I don't think he will, but because I had like a 2nd round grade on him. But Nakobe Dean, I think it's a good value pick overall. If he stays healthy, can definitely be great here for the Eagles. Kyron Johnson, a guy that played a lot of edge at Kansas and is probably just going to move to more of a linebacker at the NFL. He's not got the size to play edge at the next level, especially in a 4-3 defense. So he'll definitely move to that linebacker role, but gonna blitz a fair amount, I'd assume, because he's still really good at rushing the passers. So I think you get 2 linebackers here, one that's much better in pass coverage, one that's much better blitzing the quarterback. And then Grant Calcaterra out of SMU. He's a fine tight end, right? He's not great at anything. He's not horrible at anything. He's just a solid player to pick up here in the 6th round. That'll be, your tight end too. So it's a whatever pick. So overall, I mean, you're getting, some starters, some future guys, some versatile guys. You're getting a good enough stuff here. It's not quite a good draft just because, again, I would have gone somewhere else than Davis. Jurgens was a bit of a reach for me. Dean, is someone that you're taking a bit of a risk on. It's a solid draft for me. I think it'll improve the team overall, but it's just a solid for me. Then we have the Giants, who I'm giving a C+. As, after day 1, I just was very underwhelmed by this class. I mean, if you do start with day 1, I had them getting Evan Neal and KT, and just imagine going back, 6 months ago and telling a Giants fan that they were going to get Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau in this class. They would flip out, and you should still flip out now, because Kayvon Thibodeau is my number 1 or my number 2 player in the class, and Evan Neal is my number 3 or 4. So, yeah, I mean, this is great here, right? You're getting a starter at the offensive line that's super versatile. You're getting a phenomenal pass rusher, which I genuinely think could be the best player in this class. That's great, right? That's an A+ draft right there. Then it just kind of went to crap. Not immediately. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson is just a less good Kadarius Toney, and they're not going to trade Kadarius Toney as far as we know right now. So why do you keep taking receivers, Giants? I don't get it. You've got Kenny Golladay, you've got Darius Slayton, you've got the other receiver that I can't remember the name of right now that's pretty solid, Sterling Shepard. You got Kadarius Toney, you got those four, why do you go and get Wan'Dale Robinson in the second? I just don't get it. Why do it? I'm not a big fan of Wan'Dale in the first place, so I don't like that pick. Joshua Izidu, pretty sure that's how you say it, is a very solid guard out of UNC. He'll probably start at left guard, so I mean that's a good pickup. But the rest is just so no. Like Flott was not anything more than a late day 3 undraftable player for me, and so getting him here in the third, I'm just not a fan of. It's a massive reach. Daniel Bellinger, a solid tight end, but definitely not worth a fourth rounder to me. I don't think he starts at any point. Dane Belton is a safety I'm a fan of. This is about where I would have taken him. So, I mean, that's a solid pick, but you already have a good safety room. Micah McFadden, I was not a fan of. I would not have drafted him. DJ Davidson, also not a huge fan of him. Marcus McKeithen, never really looked at him. I was focusing on Izidu and the other UNC lineman I can't think of. But McKeithen, never really paid attention to him all that much, but I definitely don't think he was like some extremely good guard that I missed out on. And Darian Beavers is a solid linebacker here that'll, play good against the run and stuff. But other than that, I mean, I was just so underwhelming with this. So it's kind of tough to determine it because, yeah, I mean, the day one picks are great, but the rest of the class is just so majorly underwhelming. I think if you took out those day one picks, this is probably an F draft, but those day one picks are good enough. Those guys are talented enough to where it keeps it at a C plus here, but this draft could have been so much better for New York, though. It could have been. And then moving on to the Bears, again, I would just give a solid draft here. And it's weird because it starts off very good, I think. You get Kyler Gordon in the second here, which is a very talented upside corner. I think he fits nicely across from Jalen Johnson, so I think he'll be a solid two going forward with you. Jaquan Brisker, I think, is a great pickup. He's going to be a nice duo with Eddie Jackson. Velus Jones Jr., again, a nice pickup that's going to go good with Darnell Mooney. Braxton Jones, a really solid tackle here that can switch into guard. I think a great developmental guy. Dominique Robinson, a guy that I was very high on. I think this is a good pickup here. He's going to play great at edge for you. I do view him as a bit more of, a 3-4 system, but 4-3 will work as well, I think. So I think it starts off with 5 really good picks. Not great picks, but good picks. Then it just kind of is meh for me after because Zachary Thomas, not somebody I looked at. Treston Eber, not somebody I looked at. Doug Kramer, a solid run blocker, gets to the next level very well as a run blocker. But besides that, not good at all. And he's, not even as good as Justin Schaefer as a run blocker, in my opinion. Jatire Carter, never looked at him. Elijah Hicks, never looked at him. Trenton Gill, never looked at him. So you got a second half here where it's like, I'm either not a fan of these guys or I never looked at them. So you started off with a very good draft. That's probably a B+, and then you just have a very C-. So it drops it down a couple spots for me. They started off very good and then just didn't do great in the second half, in my opinion. So it's a solid draft for me. That's kind of what it is. The Lions are going to get a B for me, and I wasn't as big a fan as other people are of this draft, and I do like most of the players here, though. Aiden Hutchinson makes sense. You're not going to be good next year. Get a guy that's going to go in there, wants to be there, Michigan kid. Makes a lot of sense. He's going to be good for you. Jameson Williams, they traded up for him, and honestly, it was a good trade, to move up 20 spots, which cool and all. As an actual player, I don't know about taking Jameson 12. He's a really talented player that's very quick, but, the ACL tear, I believe it was an ACL tear at least, is definitely a concern, especially for players that his big thing is his speed, right? So that's obviously a question. Josh Pascal, Cameron Jordan-esque, which is why they're taking him, but he's not even going to be close to Cameron Jordan, in my opinion. So I just wouldn't take him here if I'm the Lions personally or any team personally. Kirby Joseph, I do think is a good pickup. He's probably going to start for you. I think he's a good player to go back there. James Mitchell, not a guy I would have drafted. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. He's not that great of a blocker, and that's what you're probably going to use him as mainly. Malcolm Rodriguez, again, just never checked him out really. Didn't really look at Oklahoma State a lot this year. James Houston, the fourth, on the other hand, could potentially be Micah Parsons light. He's got that style to him where he's a linebacker, but he can certainly come in and play edge. So maybe like a very, very, very toned down Micah Parsons, which would be awesome to have. And then Chase Lucas, a developmental corner that I don't really think turns into anything, especially with the Lions being his team. So, I like Hutchinson, I like Williams, I like Paschal, I like Joseph, I like Houston, right? But for me, Pascal's a reach. Williams is a bit of a reach. It turns out it's just a good class for me because I don't think it's a team that's going to make you much better than you are. You're adding some solid players here, but it's just not much more than that for me. I think it's a good draft. Penultimate team, the Packers here are going to get a B-. Again, just a solid grade for me. Was not a fan of the Quay Walker pick. I don't think it makes sense. You have a lot bigger needs of linebacker, especially after bringing back Devondre Campbell. And he's just a reach for me. So it doesn't really make sense at the end of the day. Devontae Wyatt, I did like. I mean, I think he'll play good at defensive end for you, right? You got him, you got Dron Reed, you got Kenny Clark, you got yourselves a really good line there. So I like that pick. Christian Watson makes sense, right? He'll probably be your wide receiver 1, to be honest, which I'm not a huge fan of having him as your 1, but he's a solid go up and get it guy. So it's a fine pick. Sean Ryan out of UCLA, a versatile lineman that you'll probably try out at right tackle, but I imagine he'll actually end up going to guard in the end, which fine. He'll turn into a solid, at the very least, a solid player for the Packers here. They know how to develop linemen. Romeo Doubs, this is about where I would have taken him. Super athletic player, but I just don't think he's going to really play off of that in the NFL, so I don't see him being much of anything, but, you never know here with the Packers. Zach Tom was a great pickup because this is a guy that probably will play right tackle for you, and you got yourself a really good line here now with Bakhtiari, Ryan. You're developing the center that I can't remember the name of, to be a starter for you. You got Dak. God, what's his name? Elton Jenkins coming back into guard. You got Zach Tom at right tackle. So, I mean, it's a young line that you're developing, but you got some really good pieces, some good guys going forward, so it makes sense here. Kingsley Enagbare, I would have taken him a bit earlier. I know not a lot of people are fans of him, but he's a guy that's going to add some really solid depth there at the defensive line. Just a big guy that just goes in. Not a lot of finesse to his game, but, if that's what he's good at, that's what he's good at. Trey Carpenter never looked at, mostly because I was watching Georgia Tech for Keon Johnson, I think it was, and he just was not good. The whole defense was not very good at all. But Jonathan Ford, never looked at him. Rasheed Walker, someone that I was, again, high on at the beginning of the process, massively dropped on. I know people were still high on him, but this is about where I would have taken him. He'll be a solid depth player for you. And then Samari Torrey, who could develop into a top 5 receiver for you, but probably is going to be nothing at the end of the day. So, I don't like the first pick. I like the next 5 or 6 picks. And then the rest is just very to me. So I think it's a solid draft, right? Again, is this going to propel you forward into being a Super Bowl contender? In my opinion, no. Just because I think losing Devontae Adams, yes, does hurt that much. I just don't know who Rodgers is going to throw to in order to kind of lead that same offense. Yeah, your offensive line is better, but that was never really the issue, besides from a few cases. So it's just like you lost Devontae Adams, you lost a lot of depth, and you're replacing some of that here with some young players that could be good going forward, but I think that's mainly what it is here is these guys will be good for you going forward. I don't think it's going to help you win right now, so for me, it's a solid draft. And then moving on to our last team with the Vikings, they get a C+. Again, just a kind of meh draft for me here because Lewis Seen is a great pickup here. Andrew Booth is a phenomenal pickup here. You got 2 really high upside secondary players, especially with Booth, who can be your number 1s going forward at both positions. Those are some great pickups for a very not good secondary. Ed Ingram, a solid guard. I wouldn't have taken him this high, but he's a solid guard nonetheless. He might be able to start for you. Brian Asamoah, I don't think he fits the best. I think he's more of a 4-3 linebacker, but, can fit decently well here across from Kendricks potentially, but, probably not going to start. Caleb Evans, again, would not have taken him this high. He's a solid corner with some decent upside, but just would not have taken him this high. Never really looked much at Asezi Otomowu, so can't really say much about him. Ty Chandler, a guy that, had his best year at UNC this year, but still wasn't phenomenal. Being the only weapon besides Josh Downs, he wasn't that impressive. A guy that has always had the traits, but he just never did it in college. And after 5 years, it's just not a guy I'm looking at to be anything, especially when he's going to be at best my 3. So it's just not a good pick in my opinion. Never looked at Lowe from Illinois. Jalen Naylor, he's a fine receiver to pick up here. I don't think he's going to be much of anything though, so he's probably still going to be your 4 or 5 and just not do much. And then Nick Muse, just again not much worth of a pick in my opinion. There's many other tight ends I would have taken here. So it starts out very good. a few okay picks, and then it just, I don't like it after that. So for me, it's just like, yeah, you have some solid players at the top. You get some players that might turn into something, but overall, it's just it's really close to meh for me. But Cena and Booth save it from that, so it's not a good draft, but it's just meh. It's not even solid in my opinion. But you give some development to these guys, it could definitely be a great class, right? Because if you let guys like Cena, Booth, Ingram, Asamoah, Evans develop, then that can be a very good class, but I don't think they all will. I think probably 2 of them will. So, yeah, not class for me. But that is going to round out the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. I'll have my best 30 undrafted free agents coming out soon. And then, when the schedule drops, we'll do season predictions, award predictions, a 2023 mock after that. So, all that. If you guys want to see that, again, hit the notification button on the subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.